10 main reasons why your chest never grows. The chest is without a doubt one of the muscles that attracts the most attention on the front of the masculine physique. When well developed, it conveys a sense of strength, dominance, and aesthetic balance. If you are one of those who have tried everything and still have not reached the results you desire, it is likely that you are making some mistakes that greatly hinder the growth of your chest. Believe it or not, although these mistakes may seem like mere details or simple little things, they make all the difference when it comes to consistently stimulating hypertrophy. In this video, you will see 10 crucial mistakes that are blocking the development of your chest and learn how to correct them. Stay tuned until the end because mistake number 6 is the most common. Number 10. Not locking your scapula before starting the movement. One of the most serious yet often neglected mistakes is leaving the scapula unfixed before performing chest exercises such as the flat bench press, incline bench press, or even various fly variations. When you do not fix your scapula, much of the work that should fall on the chest ends up shifting to the shoulder, especially the anterior deltoid, and to the triceps, significantly reducing the direct stimulus to the muscle you want to develop. The idea of locking the scapula means slightly bringing the shoulder blades together as if you wanted to join them on your back and keeping that position firm, pressing them against the bench or stabilizing your back well during a push-up. You can do this right away and already feel greater activation in your chest. This positioning prevents the shoulders from advancing too much, which can cause undue joint stress in the area and hinder chest activation. In addition, keeping the scapula retracted causes the chest to assume a more open position, ready to bear most of the tension during the movement. Another advantage of locking the scapula is the reduction of injury risk. People who train with unlocked scapula often report shoulder pain, inflammation, or even tendon ruptures over time, especially when they begin to use heavier loads. With the scapula locked, you create a solid base for the movement, reducing points of undue stress on the shoulder joint. During execution, monitor whether your shoulders are not jutting forward or rising too high. If that happens, stop, adjust your posture, and only then continue. Number 9. Inadequate volume of sets for the chest. One of the most controversial issues in the world of weight training is the ideal training volume. While some people perform countless sets for the chest, others rely on only a few sets in the hope of stimulating without exaggerating. The point is that both an insufficient volume and an excessive volume can hinder chest development. If you perform very few sets, for example, 4 or 5 per week, you will hardly provide a consistent hypertrophy stimulus. Your muscle does not receive enough signal to grow. On the other hand, those who overdo it and perform 20, 25, or even more sets in a short period run the risk of overloading the nervous system, hindering muscle recovery, and entering overtraining, resulting in constant pain and even a loss of performance. The ideal usually ranges around 10 to 20 sets per week for the chest, distributed intelligently throughout the days. For beginners, a more modest volume close to May 10th be sufficient as the body still responds well to smaller stimuli. Intermediates and advanced trainees, however, can progress to higher ranges such as 12 to 20, provided that recovery is adequate and intensity is maintained. To discover your ideal volume, the best approach is to test and evaluate. If you feel that you are not recovering well and experience intense pain, reduced performance, or a lack of energy, perhaps you are exceeding your limits. Conversely, if you feel almost no soreness the next day and do not see progress, you may need to increase the number of sets. Number 8. Low range of motion. The relentless pursuit of heavy loads causes many people to sacrifice their range of motion, a crucial factor for effectively generating tension and stimulating hypertrophy. In the bench press, for example, some athletes shorten the descent just to be able to add more weight plates, thereby failing to work the full contraction range of the chest. In fly movements, it is common to see quick repetitions without lowering the dumbbell to a position that truly stretches the muscle. When we speak of hypertrophy, range of motion is often more important than the load used alone. A complete movement causes the chest to fully stretch and contract, increasing micro tears in the muscle fibers, which in a good way induces the body to repair and hypertrophy them. If you only go halfway, you lose much of that stimulus. It is like scoring an own goal in terms of muscle gain. Using excessively heavy loads not only reduces range but also increases the risk of joint and muscle injuries. The shoulder is a sensitive area, and forcing the movement with a weight you cannot fully control can result in inflammation or even rotator cuff problems. Therefore, putting your ego aside is essential. Choose a load that allows a controlled descent, feeling the chest work while other muscles only act as assistants. There is no point in using heavy loads to impress others. First, no one is paying attention to you. And second, by doing so, you are merely deceiving yourself with numbers on the bar. Swap that momentary pride for real visible gains in the mirror. Number 7. Training chest only once per week. For a long time, it was believed that each muscle needed a fixed day in the week. And thus, the famous division was born in which Monday was the International Chest Day. However, many studies and practical experience show that training each muscle only once every 7 days may not be the most efficient for hypertrophy. The muscle recovers in a certain period, generally between 48 and 72 hours, depending on the intensity and the individual, and after that time, it is ready to be stimulated again. If you only train your chest the following week, there is a long interval in which it remains idle. Furthermore, when we pack many chest sets into a single day, cumulative fatigue occurs. In the first exercises, you are fine, but by the last ones, you are so exhausted that you cannot perform with the same quality. Splitting the volume into more sessions tends to make each workout more productive since you do not end up as drained. A simple way to increase frequency is to divide the weekly volume into 2 sessions. Instead of doing 5 or 6 exercises for the chest in one day, you can do half of that in one session and the other half in another. This way, you enter each session more rested, managing to deliver more intensity and focus during the workout. Of course, when increasing frequency, you must organize the rest of your training schedule so as not to overload the shoulders and triceps, which also participate in many chest exercises. Before moving on to number 6, do not forget to subscribe to the channel. Number 6. Wrong exercise selection without considering the portions of the chest. The chest is not a single block. It has upper, middle, and lower portions. If you perform a workout composed, for example, of a flat bench press, flies on a flat bench, and push-ups, you will be primarily working the middle portion, but you will not be providing the proper stimuli to the upper and lower parts. The result is usually an underdeveloped chest in some areas, leaving the physique with noticeable shortcomings, such as an empty upper part or a poorly defined lower part. You need to design a balanced combination that involves different angles and movements that target the different areas of the chest. In this way, you ensure complete development without gaps or aesthetic imbalances. For the upper region, for example, you can perform exercises such as the incline dumbbell press and decline push-ups where the feet are elevated, forcing the torso into an inverse incline angle. These movements emphasize the upper chest fibers, which are generally the most difficult to develop. If you have never done these variations, it is very likely that this portion of your chest is lagging behind. For the middle region, the flat dumbbell press stands out as it allows you to better adjust the movement arc and feel the center of the chest working. The machine fly also helps to maintain continuous tension, focusing heavily on the central area when you bring the arms together. For the lower region, great options are the cable crossover from a high pulley, pulling from top to bottom, and the parallel bar dips, taking care to lean your torso forward to increase emphasis on the chest. Number 5. Not controlling the eccentric phase. Every exercise has 2 main phases: the concentric, when you push the weight, and the eccentric, when you return to the starting position. It is natural to pay more attention to the concentric phase as it seems to be the effort part. But many neglect the descent, simply letting the weight drop. By doing this, you miss one of the most valuable opportunities to create controlled micro tears in the muscle fibers. The eccentric phase is fundamental for hypertrophy because at that moment, the chest fibers are being stretched under tension. That controlled stretch promotes microscopic ruptures that the body repairs during supercompensation, resulting in increased size and strength. If you drop the weight, you not only lose this advantage but also put more stress on the joints, opening the door to injuries in the shoulder, elbow, and wrist. To correct this, simply control the descent with a slightly longer duration than the ascent, for example, about 2 or 3 seconds. In the bench press, lower the weight, feeling the stretch in your chest, and keep your scapula firm without letting the shoulder jut forward. In flies, execute the descent smoothly, feeling every inch of the movement and avoiding abrupt oscillations. Remember that it is not a matter of prolonging the set so much that it compromises technique or leaves you exhausted within the first few repetitions. Balance is essential, but if you tend to drop the weight, try adopting eccentric control and see how your chest responds. Number 4. Not progressing the load over time. Another basic principle of weight training is progressive overload. In simple terms, your body only adapts and grows if it is regularly challenged with stimuli that are slightly greater than what it is accustomed to. If you repeat the same load, the same repetitions, and the same number of sets week after week, what do you think will happen? Obviously, the muscle tends to get used to it and does not evolve as it could. It is clear that in one of the previous topics, we emphasized the importance of not overdoing the load to the point of sacrificing technique. However, as your execution improves and you become comfortable with a certain weight, it is essential to gradually increase the difficulty. This can be done by adding a few more pounds to the bar or dumbbell, by adding 1 or 2 repetitions beyond your comfort zone, or even by reducing the rest intervals to intensify the stimulus. Any type of progression falls under the umbrella of load progression. For example, if you can perform 8 repetitions of the flat dumbbell press with dumbbells of approximately 20 kilograms, which converts to roughly 44 pounds, and you feel that you are not very tired at the end, maybe it is time to try dumbbells of approximately 22 kilograms, which is approximately 48 pounds, and attempt to do 6 or 7 repetitions. The idea is to force your body to adapt again. Over time, these progressions accumulate and result in real gains. If you do not record your progress, consider logging the weights and repetitions of each workout. This way, it becomes easier to know when to advance. The key is balance. Do not confuse progressive overload with a desperate attempt to lift weights that you cannot control. The progression should be incremental and safe, always preserving the range of motion and the quality of the movement. Try to increase the load used by approximately 2 to 5%. Number 3. Being too limited by the number of repetitions. Many athletes stop the set as soon as they reach the prescribed number of repetitions. For example, stopping at 10 even when they would have the energy to do 11, 12, or 13. This habit may prevent you from reaching or coming close to failure, a situation in which the muscle fibers are truly challenged. Of course, following a plan makes sense, and no one needs to push a set to exhaustion every time. But if your set ends at 10 just because the plan or app says so, you might be missing out on some valuable repetitions. That is where self-regulation comes in. If on a given day you are stronger, why not push a little further and extract the maximum from each exercise? Another negative point of being obsessed with the count is that you may lose the mind-muscle connection. Instead of paying attention to the contraction of the chest, your posture, and your breathing, you keep counting and may not notice whether the chest is actually being stimulated. Try to maintain focus on the muscle sensation, the range of motion, and the control of the movement. Only then should you think about how many repetitions have been performed. If your workout calls for a range of 8 to 12 repetitions, consider using that range as a guide and not an unbreakable rule. If upon reaching the 8th repetition, you believe you can do 2 or 3 more with good form, go ahead. That extra effort can be decisive in taking the muscle to a higher level of adaptation. On the other hand, if you can barely reach the 8th repetition, perhaps it is time to review the load or the execution. In summary, treat the number of repetitions as a reference, but do not let it be the sole determinant of the end of the set. Number 2. Using the triceps more than the chest. It is common to see people performing the bench press, push-ups, or even the pec deck machine and then complaining that they feel more in the triceps than in the chest itself. This problem in most cases is linked to how the movement is executed and the positioning of the elbows. When the angle of the arms is too narrow relative to the torso, the triceps end up dominating the exercise while the chest takes a secondary role. To adjust this, it is necessary to find a positioning where the elbows form an angle of approximately 45 degrees relative to the body. If you are doing a flat barbell bench press, for example, avoid placing your hands too close together, as this would turn the movement almost into a close-grip bench press, which ends up prioritizing the triceps. On the other hand, do not flare your elbows too much, as this can overload the shoulders. The ideal is to find a middle ground that allows the chest to be the main force generator. If you are using very heavy loads, your body also tends to look for shortcuts, and a common shortcut is to shift most of the effort to the triceps. In this case, reducing the load and prioritizing the sensation of chest contraction can be much more beneficial for hypertrophy. Some exercises naturally involve less triceps participation, such as flies and variations of the fly. These movements help intensify the mind-muscle connection and improve your ability to feel the chest working. Mastering this sensation makes it easier to return to the bench press and other compound variations without letting the triceps steal the show. Number 1. Failing to ingest enough protein and maintain proper hydration. Up to now, we have discussed technical aspects of training, but none of that will have the desired impact if you neglect what happens outside the gym. One of the most recurring mistakes is not consuming the necessary amount of protein to repair muscle fibers and promote anabolism. The body relies on amino acids to rebuild damaged tissue, and without them, hypertrophy simply does not happen or is very limited. There is no exact formula that works for everyone, but generally, those seeking hypertrophy tend to consume around 0.75 to 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight. This protein can come from lean meats, eggs, cheeses, milk, plant-based proteins, or protein supplements. Dividing this consumption throughout the day in several meals is usually more effective than concentrating everything into a single moment. Hydration is also crucial. When nutritionists say that if you do not drink a sufficient amount of water, you will not grow, believe them. They are not lying. Water participates in almost every metabolic process, including nutrient transport and body temperature regulation. If you train dehydrated, you may experience a drop in performance, an increased risk of cramps, and reduced recovery ability. In the long term, this directly affects hypertrophy as the body simply does not function at its best when it is lacking fluids. A good way to monitor hydration is to observe the color of your urine. The lighter it is generally, the better your hydration level, and to avoid waiting until you feel thirsty to drink water. If you enjoyed these tips and would also like to learn about the main mistakes that prevent your shoulders from growing, we have that video appearing on your screen right now. Thank you for watching until here, and may God bless you, my friend.